at least personally for me, it's really important to make myself do really hard things so that in the rest of my life, when I have those hard choices, when I have to choose between doing something that's really hard that could have a great payoff or just taking the easy way out and not challenging myself, it makes me like push towards those hard things because I don't have to. And I think it's important to make yourself struggle sometimes.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Freedom Solar Power, the company I use to go solar on my house. When you go solar this July, you can qualify for no loan payments until next year. When I first started looking into solar, I thought it would be a clunky and expensive process. Going solar isn't as hard as you think it is, and Freedom Solar Power is a turnkey solution focused on educating the consumer and making sure they have all the information they need to make sure going solar is right for them, both financially and as a way to help the planet. Go solar this year and you won't make any payments until 2023. Get 60 days of deferred payments, and Freedom Solar will pay 3 months of your loan. It's time to break free from rising electricity costs. Freedom Solar operates in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida, but there are plenty of other great options nationwide. Thank you to Hydro for sponsoring this episode. Hydro is an immersive workout experience designed to bring the physical, mental, and emotional experience of on-water rowing straight to your home. Hydro workouts are quick, efficient, and low impact. Rowing for just 20 minutes a day provides you with a full body workout, which engages 86% of your major muscle groups. For context, cycling engages 44%. Head to hydro.com to check them out. That's HYDROW.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode. Tracksmith is an independent running brand inspired by a deep love of the sport. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. From their versatile session tops cut from a soft stretch knit to Lane 5 and Reggie short tights perfect for racing a marathon, these pieces are built to work as hard as you do. Tracksmith is a brand for committed runners like you and me, people who know that the best part of a busy day is squeezing in a workout. They offer products for training, racing, and rest days, which you know I'm a fan of, and create experiences that make running more rewarding, more connected, and more meaningful. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN will receive free shipping, and 5% of the purchase amount will be donated to the Michael J. Fox Foundation to help find a cure and support those living with Parkinson's. And welcome back. I have Clare Farrow joining me here in Boulder. We just played with Alfie for 2 minutes, so hopefully he's nice and quiet here for the rest of our chat. So the first question is always a hard one. Who is Clare?
Oh God. I mean, I feel like that kind of depends on the day and like who you're asking, but
I'm asking Clare.
Well, again, it depends on like the day, maybe in who I'm talking to. But I mean, I feel like at the core of things, I guess I'm just like an enthusiast about everything. I don't know, I'm a big believer that if I'm not super, super passionate about something, I'm not going to bother doing it. So,
and your passion your super, super passion of late has led to long distance running. Has it not?
Yeah. So weirdly enough, yeah, you never would have been able to guess it if you knew me from age like toddler to, I don't know, 23. But yeah,
same with me. Although I haven't run quite as far. But how did that evolution happen?
So my family has been pretty into distance running. Not me specifically, but my mom and my aunt have both run Boston a couple times when I was younger, and that was always like a really cool experience for me to see them do it. Like one of my formative memories is watching some guy cross the finish line of the Boston Marathon and then like throw up all over himself. Don't remember my mom finishing.
As one does.
Yeah, but I remember this guy. But I was always like an indoor kid. I played a lot of video games, read a lot of books, wasn't like athletic at all, as much as my mother tried to push me and my sister into track and field and stuff. just wasn't really into it. But when I finished my undergrad, the summer between undergrad and grad school, I was living by myself in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is like one of the most boring cities in the entire world. There's nothing to do. I had no friends there. And so like I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna try running. I tried Couch to 5K a couple times because it's something that I, saw my mom doing and thought was really cool, but thought I could never do that. And I failed out of Couch to 5K twice the first two times I tried it. But this summer, it stuck. And it took me an extra month to finally finish it. But I made it all the way through and I ran my first 5K and I just kind of got hooked and everything kind of snowballed from there.
Did you feel any pressure with your family being big runners?
Not really. Because I never even, when I went into it, I never even thought like that I'd run a marathon. It was just not even, I was like, my mom, my aunt, my uncle, they're all so much more accomplished than I am at running. Like I never even thought I could compare myself to that. So it was always like, well, I'm just doing this as like, I'm just going to maybe run a 5K. Maybe I'll work up to a 10K at some point. Like I could never do something like that.
You finished the 5K. How'd you feel?
Terrible. I really wanted to break 30 minutes. That was like my big goal because it was like sub 35K. Like that's a nice number. I totally didn't. I had to stop and walk in the last mile. Like I think I ran like 33 minutes or something. And I was very upset with myself. I felt terrible. I was like, this was a horrible experience. But it was weird because usually in the past when I've kind of failed at something like that, I just kind of give up because I'm like, oh, well, I'm obviously not good at this. Like, why bother? I'll find something else that I'm good at. But this time I kind of was like, actually, you know what? Like, I think I could do that sub 35K eventually. And like, if I keep doing this and if I keep working hard and like do more, like I will eventually do that. So instead of like giving up this time, it kind of just pushed me to keep going, which was nice.
And at what point did the thought of running further come up?
I definitely, after that first 5K, maybe like the second one, I was like, oh, I'm going to try a 10K, like stuff like that, going further. I decided I wanted to run my first half marathon a couple months later, like with my mom on my birthday, which is fun. It was in like Gulf Shores, Alabama. Terrible conditions. It's awful, but it was good. I liked doing that. But even then I remember like finishing that 10K and I was like, that was so long. I can't imagine doing anything more than that. And then finishing that first half marathon and being like, I can't imagine doing double that. Like how just mind blown. I don't understand how people could
Was the
possibly do that.
concept of an ultramarathon even like something you knew about at the time?
No, God, no. I had no idea that was a thing.
So you trained for this half marathon and you crossed the finish line. Then what?
I was again really disappointed, just like that 5K, because I went into the half wanting to break 2 hours and I didn't. Again, this is like a theme. The first time I tried distance, I never achieved that goal. So I was again super, super disappointed. Immediately signed up for another one because I wanted to change that. I did break 2 hours in that one, so that was really exciting. And then I don't know, the first like 6 months after those two halves, I was running maybe 50 miles a month. Because this was like my last semester of grad school. So I was really busy this was actually my second semester of grad school and I was really busy studying for my comprehensive exams. So I didn't have a ton of like free time. I was very stressed. So I was not running very much. And then that summer I worked an internship and just didn't have a lot to do. So I got super, just kind of threw myself into running, went from 50 miles a month to 50 miles a week, which I wouldn't recommend. It was a miracle I didn't get injured. It was really stupid. I like started doing a run streak, like all this stuff. It was really dumb. And that's when I first started hearing about ultras. Because I was running so much more. I had so much more time spent running and I was like, I need stuff to listen to. I was running out of music. So that's when I found like running podcasts and I found Trail Runner Nation. And this was early June of 2017. So they were doing a bunch of episodes leading up to Western States in 2017. And this was like, I'd never heard of this race before. It's like, I don't know why all these people keep talking about this race in these podcasts, but like, I guess I'm listening to them. And like, I followed the race, didn't really know what was going on still, but I was like, this is super cool. Again, could never imagine doing anything like this. These people are nuts, but like, wow. So that was kind of like a seed, I think, kind of got planted there.
And how was that seed watered and managed?
Well, I managed to kind of fall in with a dangerous group of runners that I met, some on the internet who were all going to do this 24-hour race the next summer in Ohio. And they convinced me to sign up for this 24-hour race a year away. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Sure, I'll show up and I'll run like 10 miles and just hang out with people. And then I also met, at the same time, I moved back down to Alabama for my last year of grad school, and I met a group of trail runners down there, and they kind of convinced me to sign up for an ultra. They were just like, oh, I can't believe you've never done one of these before. Like, I'm like, I've never run further than 13 miles before. Like, are you crazy? And so I found, I also had signed up for my first marathon. Like
in training for the ultra.
No, actually no. This was really backwards the way I did it. I signed up for this race that was going to be in February, and this was August. And because I am the way that I am, I wasn't sure, like I didn't feel confident that I could finish a marathon race if I hadn't covered the distance at some point beforehand. So there was this race in Alabama, like a smaller race. It was a 6-hour, a 12-hour, 24-hour, and a 48-hour on this like 1 mile loop. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to sign up for this race. I'll do the marathon distance there. And like that way, no one will really know. Like I can do it as slowly as I need to just to make sure I can cover the distance so I don't embarrass myself in an actual race. And I wasn't sure I could do it all in 6 hours because I just had no idea how long it would take me. So I signed up for the 12-hour. And this was again in October. So this is like several months before my first marathon. I'd never run more than like 13 or 14 miles. And I ended up running 59 miles in the 12-hour. And I won the race overall, which was like not what I expected. And it was such an amazing experience because like the whole race, I was just like, I have no idea what's happening. The moment I hit like 15 miles, I was like, this is completely uncharted territory. And it's awesome. Like I got to celebrate my first marathon. I got to celebrate my first 50K. I got to celebrate my first 50 miler. Like I was having the time of my life. It sucked the last couple hours. Like I did a lot of walking the last hour or two. But it was just like this really wonderful experience because I went into it with no expectations, like no pressure on myself. Just kind of like, I'm going to run for a while until it starts to hurt, and then I'll walk, and then hopefully I'll start to run again. If not, that's fine because like I just wanted to hit a marathon. So like this is all bonus.
Okay, so you run 59 miles in the 12 hours. What was going through your head in those final miles?
I was really, really happy. It was really weird. Like
you think a lot of it was like the unknown? Yeah,
that's I think was one of the reasons why it was such a great race for me was because I had no idea.
Claire is being accosted by Alfie the dog right now with licks to the face.
I appreciate it. I'm feeling
so.
This
is a musical interlude with doggy tongue. So she's running we're gonna get a photo of this. She's running the 12-hour marathon. Sorry, the 12-hour practice marathon.
Yeah.
And you realize that you're doing all of these things that you've never done before. And the cool thing with these time distances on a loop is that you don't really, for the most part, you don't really know where you are in the field, right? I'm sure that helped. So how much of it was like the complete and utter unknown compared to how you go into a race now? You've done some racing. Do you think there was something to that? Like everything is a win because I've never done this before?
Yeah, there was, because I had no expectations and I had no idea, like when I hit 50K, I was like, I have no idea if this is a good 50K time. Like, I don't know. I have no benchmark. Like I had no frame of reference coming into this. Like I didn't know anything. And I think because of that, I was like, man, I am doing amazing. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I can't believe this is happening. And I just kind of like lived in that the whole time. And I didn't really have any like downtime, like bad patches like I have in other races. And I think part of that is because I really had no expectations for myself. And I was just able to just do whatever.
Do you think there's some lesson in that? And have you taken those lessons into other races?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really try, like, I feel like it's such a cop-out sometimes when I, like, do a race and I try to go into it with, like, no real goals. Like, I'll have, like, a time goal in the back of my head for some races when I, like, think I have a good idea of where my fitness is. But, like, when the gun goes off at the start, like, it just kind of all goes away because it's just, like, I want to go into it with no expectations because I don't want to put that limit there. And, like, if I go into it thinking, like, if I went into my first 100 miler going, I need to go sub 24. Like, I don't think I would have, because I would have been so caught up in every like split. Am I ahead of pace? Am I behind pace? Like getting so hyper obsessed with where I am and am I doing enough? Like, and it's not just like kind of living in that moment and being really happy about like, wow, this is really cool that I'm doing this. Like, this is amazing. Just having that, just, I don't know, just the joy and just kind of seeing what I'm doing and not kind of putting any sort of expectations or pressure on myself, I think is really helpful.
So speaking of the joy in what you're doing and not having any expectations, before we dive into some more serious topics, talk about the goo challenge, or the goo diet.
Oh,
What was that, and where did it come from?
Yeah, this was last year. After Western States. At the time, I wasn't really running much because I had hurt my back moving, so I needed to distract myself, and I came up with the idea for my goo challenge, which was where I was going to try for 7 days straight to only eat goo products, because I figured. So, obviously they have carbs, a lot of sugar and stuff like that. I had the Boone nut butters, which have fat, and then I have their protein like recovery drink mix, which is protein, obviously. So I have all of the essential macronutrients right
The
there.
dietitians listening are rolling their eyes.
Yeah, I was specifically told by Goo, like, please
We don't
do
endorse
this. Yeah, we're not backing this at all.
When I did the Grand Canyon, I had like 12 of the cold brew gels, and Roxanne was like, "You did what?"
Those are so caffeinated.
It was 120 or 140 milligrams of caffeine in each, and my legs were pulsing and I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the goo challenge.
Yeah. So I think I made it through like around 48 hours before I finally cracked, because I was at my friend's house and they were making food, and I was just like, thought I was dying, because I was tracking how many calories I was eating. I was tracking my macros, like trying to make sure I was eating enough, and I was technically eating enough in terms of calories and all that, but I was just so hungry, like just unfathomably hungry.
No fiber.
Yeah, no, it was, and I was like eating a lot of, it was just nut butter, stroop waffles, chews, and like drink mix. It was a sad. I tried to make like a little mug cake with some protein powder. It didn't work well.
So it makes me think of the people that do these 250-mile races. I just had Kevin Goldberg on, and we talked about, I don't know, a race you start on a Friday and end on a Monday, or some Monday, you start on Monday, end on a Thursday type deal. It's a different way to go about doing that while moving at the time.
Yeah,
so you mentioned at the time you had just finished Western States. Talk to me about going from not comprehending a 5K and half marathon to running from Palisades to Auburn.
Yeah, it was, I did basically 5-year like couch to Western States, which is like not, I think, a typical experience, considering I think most people are in the lottery for 5 years before they even get the chance to run the race. But yeah, I started running in 2016. I did my first ultra in 2017, and I got pulled for the lottery with my first ticket in the race, which was supposed to be obviously the 2020 race, ended up being in 2021 because it got canceled. Yeah, it was unreal. Even just the moment of even being at the lottery, I was at a lottery watch party at Berkeley Park, which is like the running store in Denver. And there were a bunch of people there who had been in the lottery for 5, 6, 7 years. And I'm the jerk at the party going like, I bet I'm going to get in, guys. Me and my one ticket, like, haha, it's a big joke. And then my ticket got pulled. No one else there got in. It was just me. And I think I started crying in the middle of the store. My hands were shaking. My mom called me. She was freaking out. It was really surreal. And I was honestly really terrified, because I was like, Western States is a really big deal. I may never get the chance to run this again, because I'm probably not going to get this lucky again. And who knows how long it could take my ticket to get pulled. And just having that as my second 100-miler, it's just really, really scary, because there's so much that can go wrong. And my first one went really, really well. And so I didn't have to do a lot of kind of the troubleshooting that you have to do in a 100-miler. And I felt like I didn't have that experience. And I was really scared going into the race that something would happen that I wasn't going to be prepared for, and I'd have to drop out or DNF, and that I'd never get the chance to run it again. So that was terrifying. Talk about I like to go into races with no pressure on myself, and that was just the
Max
complete
pressure.
opposite. Yeah.
What did that training block look like did you do a lot of mental prep? Was it just run a lot of miles? How did you prepare for something like you said it was your second? So you'd obviously done one before, but it's such a unique race in that you just climb to the top right from the start and then gets really hot and then you're running in the night and this kind of stuff. So I'm curious, like all of those variables and the different components that make it so unique, how did you approach all of that?
Well, I hired a coach for the first time because I'd always been like just self coach up until that point, but I like in Western States was like so insane to me that I was like I need to hire like I need to have a coach. I need someone who like actually knows what they're doing. So I hired a coach, and yeah, a lot of it was just running a lot, doing a lot of hills. And I think I got really lucky actually that the race got canceled in 2020 because I don't think that I would have mentally been prepared for it. I think I probably could have physically been there, but I think mentally I just probably would have fallen apart. But in 2020, I ended up doing a 48-hour race. In October, the same race I did the 12-hour at, I went back and did the 48-hour. Again, didn't train for this one either. Kind of just YOLO'd my way through it. Hadn't done any long runs longer than 2 hours. No back to backs. Just kind of
How'd that
eased
work out for
myself.
you?
Not super great. I ran 112 miles, so I got a buckle. I ran my slowest 100-miler ever, which was like 33 hours or something, with an 8-hour nap in those
That's not
33
a nap,
hours.
that's a night.
Yeah. Well, in my defense, it was in Alabama in October. I was like, oh, it's going to be really warm. Like, I don't need any cold weather gear. It got to like 40 degrees overnight. I froze my butt off, so I had to like sit in my rental car all night because I was freezing, like uncontrollably shivering. The next day, it was 70 degrees, and I was still shivering. So yeah, some mistakes were made, but it was. I think
So I want to go back to that. So you're sitting in the car shivering in your 8-hour nap. Why did you get out of the car and keep running the next day?
Because I mean that's what I was there to do. Like I signed up for a 48-hour race. I very much wanted to be done, but I was like, the race isn't over. I mean, I was like, I can't run right now. I was fully convinced that I was never going to run again. But I got my little butt up and put my Hoka slides on. I wasn't even wearing running shoes at that point. I was wearing slides and compression socks, and I just started shuffling around the course again. And I was miserable, but there were a bunch of other people all out on that course too who were also miserable. And the one thing I really love about the fixed time races is why one of they're my favorite type of ultra is because they're usually on that small loop. So you get to see everyone that you're in the race with constantly. So you get to like just chat. I get to chat with the geezers, who are my absolute favorite people who've been doing it for longer than I've been alive. And they always have really fun stories, and they, know how much it sucks. And they're always there to, kick me in the butt and or tell me how great I'm doing, whichever one I need. So that really helped. And just a couple of my friends were there, who I hadn't seen in a while because they live in the South. Now I live in Colorado. So they were able to like cheer me up and just get me to keep moving. And I don't know, that was why I was there. I knew it was going to suck and I knew it was going to be really hard, but I was at the point in my life in 2020 where I was like, I need to do something that's really, really hard because everything sucks right now.
So it makes me think of a conversation that I was having with Matt Daniels and Adam Mary at our run club this past week. We're talking about pressure is as a privilege and doing these things that are like, it's first of all, it's a choice. Like nobody has to run for 48 hours. Nobody has to run 100 miles. Nobody has to run a marathon. Nobody even has to run a 5K. We choose to do these things that are uncomfortable for a reason. And so I'm curious, what is your reason? Why are you doing it?
I mean, part of the reason I think for me is because for a lot of my life, I've kind of been able to get by without having to do hard stuff. Like I live in America and generally live a really privileged life. Like it would be really easy for me to just go through my entire life without having to do anything hard or like make a hard choice. I could always take that easy way out. So I think it's really, at least personally for me, it's really important to make myself do really hard things so that in the rest of my life, when I have those hard choices, when I have to choose between doing something that's really hard that could have a great payoff or just taking the easy way out and not challenging myself, it makes me like push towards those hard things because I don't have to. And I think it's important to make yourself struggle sometimes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That was I am so curious about like the why. That's why I started this podcast. The first sort of seed that was planted was when I was talking with Zach Miller, who was running I don't know, 160-mile weeks at the time. I was like, again, you don't have to do this. You make it look so uncomfortable. And you also happen to be having fun at the same time. Why? He talked for 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, well, there's clearly something here. There's clearly something to this optional suffering. There was an article a few years ago now in Outside Magazine that talked about why endurance athletes make the best employees. And it's because, for the most part, again, all things considered, our life is easy. And we like to choose things that make us feel alive. Opting into discomfort is basically exposure therapy. And it's exactly what you said. Like, when you are faced with an actual challenge, you then have the ability to pick the harder thing. I've had a lot of entrepreneurs and executives and CEOs on this podcast, and they talk about the overlap between endurance sport and what they do, in their office or in the boardroom or for work, as having like the Venn diagram is a perfect circle, or an overlapping circle, right? All of this stuff that we choose to do for fun is functionally beneficial for everything else that is hard in life. But I think it's so fascinating, and like, I have a lot of friends that don't run, and it's really hard to explain like why I ran for 12 hours on Monday.
Yeah.
Like, your Instagram story that took a minute to get through made me tired, kind of a response. And I think it's just so fascinating that, like, that we choose to do these things, and this is the method of flexing that or getting that exposure to discomfort.
Yeah. And some of it for me is that, like, when I was younger, I definitely, like, mentally thought of myself as someone who gave up really easily or just didn't try very hard. And so I think a lot of it to me too is just like proving to myself that I'm not that person, that I can do hard things, and like I can stick with stuff, and I don't give up easily.
Well, that's awesome. It's always good to exercise those demons and bring them right out to the forefront. If you've been enjoying this podcast and can spare 90 seconds of your time today, can you do me a favor? Can you pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review? It helps other people find and enjoy the podcast too. Thanks so much. Thanks again to Freedom Solar Power for supporting this episode of the podcast and our environment by providing an easy, green energy source. The buying process was fascinating and eye-opening, and I am excited to pay my learnings forward. If you're curious about going solar in your home, message me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'd be happy to help your journey by providing some great resources. Freedom Solar is a full-service solar company that's been installing solar panels and backup power systems since 2007. They operate in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida. Not in any of those states? Don't fret, my parents have the same panels from SunPower that were installed by a different company in Massachusetts. SunPower is the best in the business, and that's what Freedom Solar uses. I've enjoyed working with the whole team over at Freedom Solar, and I'm sure you will too. Thanks again to Hydro for supporting the podcast. I've been enjoying my Hydro to fit in bonus cardio that doesn't take much time at all, as even a 10 to 15 minute row feels like a solid workout. It's a fun experience to be able to row on familiar routes or explore new ones on the water. Head to hydro.com, that's HYDROW.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. Thanks again to Tracksmith for supporting the podcast and their continued support of not just this podcast, but the running community in general. I'm proud to partner with Tracksmith, and they're going to donate 5% of your order to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN, one word, will contribute towards this donation. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. I'm curious, when you're picking races and adventures and sugar-laden challenges over 48 hours, both of the running and not running variety, apparently. Yes. How do you go about finding or deciding what you're going to do?
There's no like real process for me. It's just, some stuff it's, Western states for me was really important because that was the first ultra I ever found out about. It was the first one I ever followed. Like it's a big deal to a lot of people, obviously. But other stuff, it's just I don't know, like there's always something that grabs me. Like I really want to do Leadville now because I was up there last summer with Goo and Celia and getting to see that
Isn't she
race.
the best person
Oh
ever?
my God, I love. She just sent me a Western States bucket hat in the mail from the training camp, and it looks so bad on me, and I love it so much. But it's some stuff like that, like Leadville, where I got to like experience just the community around that race, and like I'm like, okay, I want that. I want to do that because that seems amazing. Just like the energy at that race seems really cool. And there's stuff like I'm going to do CIM in December, and like that I'm excited about because I guess also the energy. Like I know that I've been trying to do that race since 2019 now, but it's also like there's just something about chasing a fast marathon that is really exciting to me. Like I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons I get attracted to different races. There's 6 days in the Dome, which is I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a race in essentially an indoor track in somewhere in the Midwest. I don't remember where, but like that, I'm incredibly into 400-meter track. I want to do a 6-day really bad.
Oh my God. I did 20 miles on a 200-meter track once, and I swore I'd never do anything like that again.
Yeah. Something about the really short loops I find really interesting just because like there are some races like Western States is a really good example where it's gorgeous. The course is so beautiful.
And you could not see anyone.
Yeah. Well, but it's also like you're constantly distracted. Like if you're having a really crappy time, like you can just look around you and you'll get distracted by the scenery. It's point to point. So you're not seeing the same stuff over and over again. It's always something different. A track race like that, there is no new scenery. You are staring at the same track the whole time.
Same crack on the wall.
Like you can't distract yourself like that. It's just you and your brain. And like something about that is really appealing to me. Just like having to spend so much time in my own head and kind of like deal with that. Something about that is very attractive to me.
Have you unpacked that?
I probably should. I don't know. I spent a lot of time with myself alone. Like I run alone most of the time. I run with people more now in the past 6 months, but for most of the time I've been running almost entirely by myself. So yeah, I spend a lot of time alone with myself in my head. I like my own company, which is probably a good thing. But I don't know, something about it feels very meditative to me, like running on a loop like that, just totally zoned out, remove all the outside distractions, and you just kind of have to sit with yourself. And I think there's something really cool that can happen in that time.
And then you have that feeling of just being trashed.
Yes. That's always fun. I like that feeling too.
I finished the 4-pass loop on Monday and I was like, ow. And yes. Like,
did you have like the full leg twitches
Yeah.
where like you just can't sleep because everything hurts? Like you move because you're trying to get comfortable, but you can't get comfortable because just everything hurts.
Yeah, and we were camping, which made it even worse. Yeah. It's so sick, like that we like this kind of stuff, but it's just like, wow, I just accomplished something awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a nice visceral reminder that you've done that. Okay, I'm curious about the 6-day adventure in a track, a week of running almost. Let's say you do that next year. You're stepping on the start line. What's going through your head?
I mean, just probably just excitement because that again, it's one of those things where like I don't know what's gonna happen. That's a place I have never been to before. Never even been close to 6 days. Like I get 48 hours, and even a solid at least 8 to more of that we're sleeping. So like it's exciting stepping into something that like I have no expectations. So there is no pressure. Like I'm just gonna go and just see what happens. It could go really terribly. It could go really great. Like I'm excited to find out. There's this German poet, Rainer Marie Rilke, and he has this like really, really tiny book. It's more of like a pamphlet called Letters to a Young Poet. And it's the responses he wrote to this guy who was like writing to him for advice. And one of the pieces of advice he gives the guy, and this is I'm going to paraphrase, and it's not going to sound anywhere near as nicely as when he says it, but it's something along the lines of encouraging him to live the questions now. Basically, just don't get so caught up in trying to figure out what the answer is. Just kind of live the question, like just be in that space, and then eventually farther down the line, like you'll arrive at that answer and you might not even notice. And like it's more important to just kind of live in that question and just see what happens.
It's like a curiosity.
Yeah.
Part of me is fascinated by the marathon at the moment because like I spent 4 years trying to break 3.
Hmm.
And breaking 3 is such a dumb and arbitrary goal that like we all assign so much meaning to. It's like, oh, you're a good runner if you can break 3.
Yeah.
You're a good runner if you can do it, if you can run consistently and like show up to a race not broken. But we assign all this value on these arbitrary like breaking 4, breaking 3, breaking OTQ. And so now like I feel like I'm playing with house money and it's curiosity. Like I am not going to OTQ. And so I'm somewhere in the 3 to 2 something range.
Yeah.
But there are no more arbitrary numbers in between. So it's like totally up to me how far to go.
Yeah.
And I feel like a little bit of that with like the exploration of new distances and new durations and that kind of stuff. I'm not quite sure where I was going with that, but the curiosity is a piece that I've talked about with people in the sport and business professionals as well. It's like it's the ability to be curious versus like pick something and go for it. I think people who are curious versus like here's what I'm going to get after and here's the number, here's the whatever. Like you can probably go further if you're just curious with a plan.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, I'm going to go for a run and see how far I can go. I just find it so fascinating. Again, the crossover between running and life. So for you, do you actively think about what you're doing in sport and applying it to life? And I'm thinking, I'm going to end my question there.
I mean, sometimes, yes. I mean, I brought it up a lot. I brought it up in my like last job interview. Like I talked about ultra running and like as a way to like improve it. I got the job.
Nice.
So it worked out pretty well, I'd say.
Was the person a runner?
No. But it was like the end of the interview. It was like a panel interview and they're like, is there anything else you want to like let us know about you? And I was like,
I need 6 days off.
Well, actually I did have to bring that up. Because it was like right before Western States. And I was like, I'm gonna need some time off if I get the job. But I did bring up that like I was like, I run ultras. Like I have a proven ability to stick with things.
Yeah.
I am very stubborn in that way. Like once I've started something, I don't give up until I finish. Like I brought that in. I do think that I don't know if I like actively think about what running has taught me like while I'm living the rest of my life, but I definitely like can look back at choices I've made and decisions I've made and be like, I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't started running and like how I've grown through that.
Can you give an example?
Just like my relationships with people, I stand up for myself a lot more now. Like I have more confidence in myself and like have more self-worth essentially because running has really helped me get that confidence and like belief in myself that I didn't have before.
Isn't that awesome?
So it's quite nice. I enjoy that part quite a lot. Yeah.
The other piece that you were sort of alluding to is the consistency and not giving up. So I've struggled personally with like, why do I post on Instagram every single day? Like, who cares? And then I get comments about like, oh, it's like so motivating to see you're consistent in and out training and blah, blah, blah. I frequently see the post of your watch and your shoes, and it's remarkably consistent. And so, I mean, I just want to give you kudos for doing that because as silly as it feels sometimes, it's like it's really helping people to see that type of consistency. I'm wondering if you have ever explored your relationship with social media as well.
Yeah. I mean, my relationship with social media has changed a lot. I feel like over the past, I don't know, since I started running, I definitely would post a lot of like pretty much like only running stuff for a while. From like probably 2017 until 2020-ish.
As new runners do.
Yeah. I was super into it. I was, tagging everything, doing a lot of hashtags, like trying to kind of fit in with that crowd. And then I just kind of realized that social media is not something that I ever want to be my job. I never want it to feel like an obligation. I post on it because it adds value to my life and not because it's something that I feel like I have to do for some reason. Same with running. Like it's something I do because I enjoy it and I find it adds value to my life. I don't want it to feel like an obligation or a job or anything like that, because that I feel like will suck the joy out of it for me. And so like I don't really focus on like making sure that like, oh, like I need to get the perfect content for this or stuff like that. Like I just post what is happening in my life. And a lot of that does tend to be running because I run a lot, like 8 or 9 hours a week, like that adds up. I'm going to post a lot of running stuff. But now it's also like, I'm going to post my dogs and like my family and my friends and stuff that isn't running related at all. I'm going to post a lot of music. Like that's just, it's part of my life now. Like I want, I don't know. I enjoy social media, TikTok, especially right now. I think it's really fun. But I don't know. I want it to just be something that I enjoy. I don't want it to feel like a weight around my neck or something. And I feel like at one point it was starting to get to that point where I was like, am I just posting just to post because I feel like I have to? Or am I posting because like, oh, this was really fun and I want to talk about it? Oh.
Makes sense. So you've referred to a couple of communities in Alabama, here in Colorado, Pennsylvania, and wanting to do races because of the communities associated with them, with Western States and Leadville. Talk to me about your relationship with the community. What does community mean to you?
Just like, I don't know how a hug feels. It's like so cheesy, but like I've gotten really, really lucky with some of the people that I've met through running. Like, I mean, I have this giant tattoo on my leg that is for a group of people that I met through running. So
Do they all have the tattoo?
no, it's a couple of them have team tattoos. Not everyone though. We'll work on that. But it is our like one of our logo designs. So, but I don't know. I'm obviously a little biased because I run, but I do find that pretty much all the runners I've ever met are all really amazing people. And so either that or I've gotten really, really lucky with the groups that I've come into contact with.
Well, I jokingly say that like it's hard to be an asshole in trail running because you need other people to support you. And if you're an asshole, nobody wants to support you.
Yeah, especially with ultras, like you can get through some 100-milers with no crew, no pacers, no nothing. But
Definitely
like
not as fun.
yeah, and it's so much better when you do it with other people. And I think I learned that actually a lot between my first 100-miler and Western States, because my first 100-miler, Javelina, I had a crew. I had my parents and my sister and the guy I was dating at the time, but I chose not to have a pacer at all. I ran the whole race by myself because I just was like, I just want to do it on my own, very independent, very angry about it sometimes. So I was like, I'm going to do it all by myself. And then for Western States, my mom was so worried about me that I was going to like fall off the side of the trail in the middle of the night and die. So she told me in no uncertain terms that I was going to have a pacer starting at Forest Hill. Like I had no choice in the matter. So two of my friends actually flew out. One of them flew out from Boston. The other flew out from Michigan to come pace me. And I kind of reframed it for myself. I had to, because I'm someone who's like, I need to do everything by myself to prove myself. So I had to kind of reframe it to myself as like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to spend a lot of time with people that I love and to help them experience this race that not a lot of people get to experience. It is a very special thing to be able to run on the Western States Trail during that race. So it's like, this is a chance for me to like spend time with people I love and share this experience with them that we may never have again. So like I had to reframe it all in my head so that I'd be okay with it and like it wouldn't get in the way of my like I must do everything by myself. And that was a really just amazing experience. Just being with people. And I think running is really cool in that way because especially like with run clubs, run groups, like you're spending time with these people doing this stuff together. And I don't know, there's just something about sweating together that I feel like is maybe not intimate, but like it's more than just like hanging out, drinking a beer on a patio. Like there's something really special about that, I find.
Yeah, so I crewed for the first time at Western States this year, and Zoe Rome, who we crewed for, just sent a text. So today is Friday, July 15th. The race was on the 25th or 26th of June. She said she wrote like a million different texts and kept deleting them because she couldn't comprehend, or she couldn't put to words, and she's a writer. She couldn't put to words the immense gratitude she had. She said it was like swimming in a rucky chucky of love.
I identify with that statement.
And it was just so wild to see 5 or 6 people, 6 or 7 people, just like so dedicated to one person and doing anything that that person needed for one day.
Yeah.
Or more than one day, actually. And it's just so unique within running or triathlon, maybe. But it's so cool to experience. And I encourage anyone listening, if you've never been to an ultra, go to an ultra, particularly a 100-miler or beyond.
Work at an aid station.
Work at an aid station. If you ever feel like you need like if you're feeling bad about humanity and all the dumpster fire and the news, all the trash in the news these days, go to an ultra, volunteer an ultra. It will give you a renewed sense of hope for us.
Yeah, especially if you get like one of the later aid stations in like 100-miler. Oh man, that's where it's at. I volunteered at like the mile 70 aid station of the Chattanooga 100 one year. Oh, that was an amazing experience because it was like right the last little bit before cutoffs. Like we were cutting people off, and like just seeing the people like coming through right before the cutoffs and like being able to get them out of there before they got cut off, and then seeing them at the finish and seeing them finish the race.
So
it's
cool.
Just like, oh my God, best experience.
The golden hour of a race, or the last hour of a 100-miler, where these are people who are not professionals. They are out there because they have some strong reason to be, or they just want to avoid doing errands on that weekend. And they're doing it with their family. They've got their kid in their arm. They've got, their family around them, and they're hobbling across the finish line. Some of them have the ultraline, which is really uncomfortable to see. I can only imagine experiencing it. It's just such a cool thing to witness. Moving along from that, I could wax poetic on golden hour for an hour. Curious about how you define success, right? I'm so interested in, so I've done 200 plus episodes with this podcast, and I'm so curious, or I've started noticing some trends around how people define success and then what they're actually able to do. So not to build that question up too much, but curious about how you would define success.
Like in running or just in general?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, like if I know I've been successful in something, if like, hey, I'm still standing, I'm alive at the end of the day, like that's always my main goal. Just kind of make it through. It's important to have achievable goals, right?
Start there.
And the amount of times I've almost fallen off the side of a trail, and like, yeah, sometimes it's a really big goal for me. But also just like, I don't know, if I'm happy and the people around me are happy, that I feel like I've probably been pretty successful. I spent a lot of my life being really unhappy. So at this point, like that's always my main goal.
Do you think about that?
Like whether or not I'm happy, or?
No, the fact that like you are happy versus thinking back to times when you weren't happy.
Yeah. I think about it a lot because I'm very grateful for it. Have a little like gratitude journal that I've kept for 5 years now. And a lot of that like is, even when I'm having like a really, really crappy day, like I just all I have to do is kind of flip back a little bit and be like, man, like this, at least I'm not like at this day 4 years ago where like the only thing I was grateful for that day was the fact that like my coffee maker was working. Like if that's the best thing that's happened.
I mean, coffee's pretty good.
Yeah. But like there is definitely some stuff that I like think back on. I'm like, man, I've really like, I've come a long way, and, my life isn't perfect by any means, but I'm genuinely really, really happy with it. And that's, I don't know, it's a really nice feeling to have.
Cool. Well, anecdotally, my observation is that people who assign a subjective definition to success are more successful conventionally. You're doing it.
Sweet.
No, it's interesting, right? Because you can control that narrative versus I want to run sub 24 hours. I want to win this race. I want to go to the Olympics. Like these are things that aren't really under your control for the most part. There's so many variables. Who shows up on the day? Did you get your poop in that morning? Like all these different things. Whereas if it's about being proud of yourself and being happy, you've already won.
Yeah. And I think part of it is it's pretty easy, at least I think for me, to kind of not have the whole, oh, I need to win this race. Oh, I need to run this certain time. I need to beat everyone, because like that, again, it's not my job. I don't I don't show up to a race thinking I'm going to podium. If I do, that's really cool. Awesome bonus. But like, I'm not the type of person who's going to lead off the front line or try to keep up with people. Like at the end of the day, the reason I do these races and the reason I'm running is incredibly selfish. Like I'm just doing it for myself at the end of the day. Like I don't care about any, I obviously I love racing against people. I find that I can really push myself to stuff that I probably wouldn't be capable of in a time trial if I am racing against someone. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't really care if someone's pulling away from me. That doesn't really inspire me to, chase them down or something. Like it's not my thing. I just want to kind of do my own thing, run within myself, not beat myself down trying to keep up with people who are going to beat me anyway. So,
Cool. Well, I think you're on the right path for sure. It's fun to follow along, and can't wait to watch the 6 days in the Dome.
It'll be fun. It's air conditioned, so I'm looking
Oh,
forward to that.
nice.
Yeah.
So it's the house.
Yeah. It's like it's pretty good conditions if you don't mind being trapped in a dome for 6 days.
Awesome. Well, Claire, thank you so much. Where can we find you on your corner of the internet if we want to follow along with your running and dogs and family and laps on a track?
My Instagram, Clare Elizabeth, Clare with 2 E's, no I, _ Elizabeth. So that's mostly where I am.
Cool. Thanks so much, and we'll see you out there. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.